International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. This is Mariam Berchi. In today's top stories, the President of the Republic, Abdelmejid Tebboune, has announced a series of measures in favor of the media coinciding with the National Press Day. As the UN Secretary Council is meeting today to examine the situation in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli warplanes have pursued their pounding of the southern part of the Palestinian territory. The President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, stressed the need to immediately stop the aggression in the Gaza Strip and spare the civilians the torment of the bombings and destruction carried out by the Israeli killing machine. The President of the Republic, Abdelmejid Tebboune, has announced a series of measures in favor of the media coinciding with the National Press Day. In a statement read on his behalf during the awarding ceremony of the President of the Republic's Prize for Professional Journalists, the Communication Minister Mohamed Laghab said the measures were tantamount to an indirect support brought of the media. Among these, a reduction in the national media subscription to the Algerian press service, as well as a decrease of plane tickets for sport journalists.
First, a reduction in the national press subscription to the Algerian Press Agency, APS. Second, a reduction in the added value tax. Measures will be taken to this effect in the forthcoming additional law of finance. Third, a decrease ranging from 33 to 36% in the costs of Algerie Telecom, in addition to an increase in its capacity. Fourth, a decrease in the rent costs at the press house, and to rename with sport journalists the press centers of stadiums. Sixth, a decrease in the air transport prices for sport journalists to cover African events.
The President of the Republic entrusted the Communication Minister to pull efforts to promote the information sector through a series of measures, including the reactivation of the Fund of Support to Journalists.
To entrust the Communication Minister and the Presidency's Direction General of Communication to work out a study on the reactivation of the fund in support of journalists, mainly training, and also entrust them with working out an approach designed to organize the advertisement market and to find a final solution to the security residences at Sidi Faraj.
The measures announced by the President of the Republic was hailed by the press professionals as likely to give a fresh impulse to the national press. The Presidency of the Republic has extended its condolences to the family of the journalist of the Channel 3 of the National Radio, Jamil Boukersha, who died yesterday. It expressed its compassion to his family and to the whole media corporation. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, has received the Secretary General of the African National Congress, ANC, of South Africa, Fikile Mbalula, now on a visit to Algeria. During the meeting, the two parties examined the perspectives for the relations between Algeria and South Africa. On the occasion, the two men held the revolutionary and militant history linking the two countries and the two brotherly people in shaping their identity, uniting their positions regarding the defense of the oppressed people and reinforcing their efforts to meet the aspiration of the African continent. The President of the People's National Assembly, Brahim Boughali, has received here in Algiers the Secretary General of the African National Congress, ANC, of South Africa, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. More details with Jamal Salmani.
During the meeting, Mr. Boughali stressed the strong and rooted relations between the two countries, marked by friendship, solidarity and cooperation values, notably regarding questions of security and peace, decolonization of the African continent and its liberation from dependency. He highlighted the necessity to face up to the challenges which the continent is confronted to, notably in security, food, energy and climate, in order to achieve sustainable development and prosperity for the African peoples. Mr. Boughali added that the Algerian Parliament would strengthen bilateral cooperation by sharing experiences and exchanging visits by parliamentary delegations, adding that the setting up of parliamentary group of friendship with South Africa aimed to follow this path. The South African official recalled his country's appeal to International Court of Justice to hold Israel accountable for its crimes in the occupied Palestinian territories.
As the UN Security Council is meeting today to examine the situation in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli warplanes have pursued their pounding of the southern part of the Palestinian territory. Jamal Salmani has more details.
Yes, Miriam, according to press reports, tens of Israeli tanks, troop carriers and bulldozers today enter the area of Khan Yunis, targeted for several days now to relentless bombardments. The news agency Wafa affirmed that several people were killed in airstrikes that hit overnight one of the entries of a hospital in the northern part of Gaza. Several organizations have expressed deep concerns at the fate of the thousands of Palestinians who fled the fighting in the Gaza in the northern part to seek refuge in the south, now subjected to continued bombardments. Palestinian sources put at over 15,500 the number of people killed since the Israeli army launched its operations in Gaza nearly 2 months ago. In this respect, UNICEF urged the international community to save the children in the southern part of Gaza, where it stressed the worst bombardment is being carried out and is having a huge impact on children. It once again urged for the enforcement of a ceasefire for humanitarian reasons and for an unconditional access to the Gaza Strip. This came as the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross ICRC, Mariana Spogliarett, who arrived today in Gaza, described as unbearable the population's sufferings and urged for the protection of the civilians in conformity with the war laws. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council will be holding a meeting behind closed doors to examine the disastrous situation in the enclave. The Deputy Secretary General to the Political and Peace Building Affairs will make a report on the humanitarian situation there. Back to you, Mariam.
The President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, has received a telephone call from U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, during which they discussed the latest developments in Palestine and the ongoing efforts to end the Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people. The details with Jamal Salmani.
President Abbas stressed the need to immediately stop the aggression in the Gaza Strip and spare the civilians the torment of the bombings and destruction carried out by the Israeli killing machine. The president stressed the importance of increasing the entry of relief, medical and food supplies into Gaza, providing water, electricity and fuel as quickly as possible, and providing the necessary aid so that hospitals and basic facilities can resume their work to treat thousands of wounded and provide services to the Palestinian civilians. The Palestinian president reiterated his rejection and prevention of the forced displacement of the Palestinian people, whether in the Gaza Strip or in the West Bank, including Jerusalem, stressing the need for the United States to intervene to prevent the attacks, murders, demolition of homes, and expulsions of Palestinians carried out by the Israeli occupation authorities and terrorist colonists in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and the Jordan Valley, which are facing silent and premeditated annexation. He pointed out that the Gaza Strip is an integral part of the Palestinian state and that it is not possible to accept or deal with plans by the occupation authorities to separate, occupy, cut off or isolate any part of the Gaza Strip, stressing the necessity of releasing the Palestinian clearance funds. President Abbas assured U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris of his readiness to work to implement the two-state solution based on the international legitimacy resolutions, starting with the State of Palestine gaining full membership in the United Nations by a decision of the Security Council, convening an international peace conference to provide international guarantees and a timetable for implementation, and assuming full responsibility for the entire Palestinian territory in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. He stressed that peace and security are achieved by ending the Israeli occupation of the entire territory of the State of Palestine along the 1967 lines, with East Jerusalem as its capital, and resolving the refugee issue and the return as per Resolution 194. He stressed that security and military solutions have proven their failure and will not achieve security and stability for the region.
Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh said today that Israel, driven by the instinct of revenge, has cut off the lifeline to the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip in one of the bloodiest military campaigns against the Palestinian people since the 1948 Nakba, with more than 15,000 people killed and tens of thousands wounded. Speaking at the start of the weekly cabinet meeting held in Ramallah, the Palestinian Prime Minister said that the Israeli machine of killing, destruction and genocide has resumed the killing of children, women and the elderly devoid of reason, conscience and humanity. He said that United Nations data indicate that 312 Palestinian families lost 10 or more members in the Israeli bombing, while 594 families lost between 2 and 5 people. Shtayyeh criticized the country that called on Israel to make the killing proportionate, saying it is unfortunate and shameful for this cause to kill a smaller number of people and for the destruction to be less. Such positions are legalization of murder. The world must demand that Israel stop the aggression, killing and destruction immediately. Now, the Emirati President of COP28, Sultan Al Jaber, has reaffirmed that he respected the scientific recommendations on climate change and called for a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 43% by 2030. He said, "We are here because we believe in respect in science." Let's listen to him.
We're all here because we made a very clear call to action, and we've been very upfront about it, and we said clearly and repeatedly that the UAE takes this task with humility, responsibility, and we fully understand the urgency behind this matter. And we're here because we very much believe and respect the science. 43% of global emissions must be reduced by 2030. That is 22 gigatons. And we need to make that happen to keep 1.5 within reach. And I have been crystal clear on the fact that that is a critical success factor if we want to keep 1.5 within reach.
That was the Emirati President of COP28, Sultan Al Jaber. For his part, the chair of the Intergovernmental on Climate Change at COP28, Jim Skier, stresses the importance of listening to science and reaffirming Dr. Sultan Al Jaber's commitment to keeping 1.5 degrees within reach.
And just to say, we are concerned with the facts and the figures. We don't carry out our own research. We assess the work that is carried in the scientific community. And when we produce our reports, every line, every word is approved in collaboration with governments and has been endorsed by them. And just a couple of words about what IPCC actually said about fossil fuels, and I will say it very precisely. So, looking at scenarios in which global warming is limited to 1.5 degrees with no or little overshoot, by 2050, fossil fuel use is greatly reduced and unabated coal use is completely phased out. These are the words that we used. I can give you some extra numbers as well for oil, for example. Oil use by 2050 is reduced by 60% and natural gas use reduced by 45%.
At COP28, 50 oil and gas companies have pledged to reduce methane emissions to near zero by 2030. The president of Environmental Defense Fund at COP28, Fred Krupp, has said the announcement was the best news for climate change.
For me, the high point of today was clearly the Oil and Gas Decarbonization Charter, which calls for the virtual elimination of methane emissions, the end of routine flaring, and a commitment to independent and public reporting of emissions using recognized international standards. Now, coupled with the oil and gas methane standards that were finalized by the U.S. government also today, and the methane initiatives outlined in the UAE-China-U.S. summit that Adnan just referenced, in terms of the temperatures that we will otherwise see in the next decade, today could be the single most impactful day of announcements from any COP in my 30 years at the Environmental Defense Fund.
Despite growth in renewables, annual investments need to double for Africa to achieve universal energy access and meet its energy and climate goals. Jamal Sinmani has more.
Though Africa accounts for less than 3% of global renewables capacity, renewables deployment has grown sustainably over the last decade, doubling between 2012 and 2022 to almost 59 gigawatt. The growth in the sector indicates huge potential for renewables in the coming years and decades. Wind energy capacity in Africa has been steadily increasing over the last decade and is expected to rise by over 900% based on projects announced to date. Speaking about the solar and wind energies, the director of Regen Asset here in Algeria, Federico Gianagelli, explains.
In the last 10 years, there has been a lot of progress in the technology development. It's been actually overwhelming. There's hundreds of startups that have come out, thousands of acronyms that you might hear about CCS, CCUS, BECCS, direct air capture, DACs, that are popping up with millions and billions of dollars of investment. Now, when you, probably one of the messages I want to pass across is probably in line with what George is saying, is that technology is important, but the race of decarbonization is not going to be lost by technology. This is something that I learned in my last 3 years as a technology director. I mean, the technology is there. I mean, we just sometimes, I don't know, probably as a human being, you just go and try to knock them down because they are not going to be a reliable solution. We need to test them. So when you bring that to Algeria, I mean, that means mainly, I would say, 3 areas of focus. One, I mean, we talk about that. I mean, the solar. Looking into the solar, also into new things that are coming out. Solar panels has been decreasing in cost 95% in the last 30 years. The efficiency has gone up to 50%, and the efficiency is going up. So that technology in improving efficiency is going to be key. There is even, I mean, companies right now that are thinking into photoelectrocatalysis. You can transform the sun immediately to hydrogen, among other ones. A second pillar, I would say, of course, the wind is something that needs to be worked. I mentioned about that the solars are in the top 5 countries, but the wind, I mean, have 2.5 times the capacity here.
Africa's solar energy market, the fastest growing renewable energy resource on the continent, accounted for 57% of renewable investments between 2010 and 2021. The use of standalone off-grid solar systems improved access to electricity on the continent by 62% between 2009 and 2019, according to Giorgio Vicini, Managing Director of Eni Algeria. Technology and partnership are the solutions to reduce emissions.
It has been demonstrated that the most effective way to reduce emissions and to go towards energy transition is technology application, technology breakthrough. We are working a lot on that. We are working a lot on new technologies that could, like solar renewables, CCS, and hydrogen. We have also pilot projects, and we are working on that here in Algeria as well. So technology is going to be for the future the best way towards energy transition and towards climate change matters. And this is what we believe is possible to do on top of what we are already doing in Algeria in cooperation with all the main stakeholders, starting from Sonatrach, Arash, Al Naft, and all the other partners that we are working in country.
A report highlighted the potential scale of investment opportunities available in Africa's renewable sector. Renewable investments in Africa grew at an average rate of more than 96% per year over 2010-2020. Despite this, the International Energy Agency and the African Development Bank Group estimate that in order for Africa to achieve universal energy access and meet its energy and climate goals, around $200 billion of investment is needed every year until 2030, more than double current annual investments. This gap is critical to Africa's energy transition.
You're listening to Radio Algeria International. Next, our economic broadcast.
Hi and welcome to our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. First in the news, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has laid the foundation stone for the Garage Billet primary iron ore processing plant in the province of Tindouf during his work and inspection visit to the province. The plant is part of a plan to develop and exploit the mine, one of the largest in the world in terms of reserves, with nearly 3.5 billion tons of iron ore and an initial production capacity of 2 to 3 million tons a year. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has also laid the foundation stone for the 950-kilometer Béchar-Tindouf-Garage Billet railway project as part of his working visit to the province of Tindouf. President Tebboune seized this opportunity to stress the need to meet the 30-month deadline for completing the strategic mega project, pointing out that Algeria's future is intimately linked to the Garage Billet mine, which he continued will save the country $3 billion in iron imports. Algeria has decided to make an additional voluntary reduction of 51,000 barrels a day from 3rd January 2024 until the end of March as part of its effort to support market stability in coordination with the member countries of the OPEC Plus group, according to a press release issued by the Ministry of Energy and Mines. Algeria's production will amount to 908,000 barrels a day during the first quarter of 2024, according to the press release, which underlined that these additional reduction quantities will be gradually restored according to market situation. More in our program. The Commission of Organization and Monitoring of Stock Exchange Operations, COSOB, has announced the approval of a new regulation introducing new mechanisms to the Algiers Stock Exchange aimed at modernizing stock market practices and boosting financial market activity. Through this new regulatory text, COSOB aims to introduce new mechanisms for the Algiers Stock Exchange with a view to modernizing stock market practices and preparing it for important deadlines in line with government guidelines aimed at revitalizing financial market activity while making it more attractive for large companies to raise the capital they need to finance their growth on the one hand and facilitating access for SMEs and startups on the other, said the same source. Algerian and Tunisian economic operators have highlighted in Algiers the importance of economic and commercial cooperation in the field of agriculture and the agri-food industry by exploiting the investment and partnership opportunities available in this area. These operators were speaking at the Algerian-Tunisian Economic Forum organized by the Arab African Center for Investment and Development under the theme Opportunities and Challenges of Sustainable Development. The International External Bank of Algeria, BEA International, a branch that the External Bank of Algeria, BEA, plans to establish in France, intends to open 5 bank branches in major French cities where there is a large Algerian community, announced Finance Minister Laziz Faïd. During a plenary session devoted to oral questions from members of the National People's Assembly, APN, on the 2024 draft finance bill, the minister said that BEA International was awaiting approval of its license application before it can officially begin its activities, adding that it will open 5 branches in the main French cities pending their progressive expansion in European cities. And And to wrap it up, the local development bank BDL has opened in Algiers the first commercial branch dedicated to Islamic finance under the name Al Quds, as well as an area dedicated to digital services under the supervision of the managing director of this public bank, Youssef Lalmas. In a statement to the press on the sidelines of the inauguration ceremony for the branch located in Didush Murad Street, accompanied by the general coordinator of the Ministerial Fitwa Commission and member of the BDL's Sharaik Committee, Mohammed Ouidir Mishnan, and executives from the bank, Youssef Lalmas, said that these measures were in line with the directives of the public authorities aimed at making Islamic finance more widespread and digitizing the services of financial and banking institutions in Algeria. And with this, we come to the end of our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. Goodbye.
Now a reminder of our top stories. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has announced a series of measures in favor of the media coinciding with the National Press Day. As the UN Security Council is meeting today to examine the situation in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli warplanes have pursued their pounding of the southern part of the Palestinian territory. The President of the State of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, stressed the need to immediately stop the aggression in the Gaza Strip and spare the civilians the torment of the bombings and destruction carried out by the Israeli killing machines. Thank you for joining us on Radio Algeria International. More news tomorrow, same time, same frequencies. That's all from me now, Mariam Bershi. Bye for now.
Manifester pour les Palestiniens, on les laisse crever. C'est ça qui est scandaleux.
I want freedom for the population. 2 million prisoners living in this location, shouting at the wall, but nothing is ever changing. That's life under an occupation.
هذا هو عدو الإنسانية، هذا هو عدو الأطفال. ماذا